talk. Real talk. Real talk.
Hey guys. How you guys doing?
Oh,
How
funny.
you guys doing? How are you guys doing today?
Yes. Good evening.
This
Marriage
is-
Matters community.
This is Ezekiel,
and Sarah.
and we're here today with another episode of
Marriage
Matters
Matters
Live.
Live, yes.
So glad to be here with you guys today.
100%.
It's been a corker of a day, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The last couple of days preparing, working on things, especially for this community here, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Thanks, honey.
It's alright.
Okay, so again, we've got a cracker of a
my gosh.
topic today, cracker of a subject.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today, Sis?
Parental influence.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Parental influence.
Yes. And I really want all those who had their parents, as a big influence in their life regarding relationship, marriages, and all that kind of things, to really get tucked in the chat there. And if your parents are not involved in your relationship as well, I really want you to jump on the chat and let us know why, and how you see things and why you've taken the stance you've taken. So yes, we really want the chat getting lit up today. Yes.
You do you?
I do.
Okay. All right. So obviously this is a massive area when we talk about relationships.
Yeah.
Why? Because obviously everyone's got parents to a greater or lesser degree.
Yes,
we all came from somewhere, didn't we?
That's right.
And as people are developing, as we're growing over time, as you're a youngster, your parents, they kind of coddle you. They are, in many senses, your everything.
Yeah.
You are their everything, especially if you're kind of like an only child, so to speak.
Yeah.
If it's just you, you're the only one.
For them to focus on.
Yeah, generally it's that kind of preferential treatment.
Yeah.
You're super special. But there's a psychological kind of side to this.
Mm-hmm.
So the parent takes care of the child looks up to the parent,
Mm-hmm.
and there is this, and I've seen this with me and Grace, to be honest with you. You're getting to that place where the child is maturing,
Yeah.
they're getting older, but you still want to kind of coddle them. You still want them to be
protect
that,
them. Yeah.
that baby, that
Yeah.
child that they were.
Yeah.
And we're talking about marriage, guys. This is Marriage Matters, right? So you can't really coddle someone into the matrimonial home. It
That's
doesn't
right.
work. And we get to a point in time where we need to take hands off, we need to step back, and we need to let the young ones flourish,
Yeah.
so to speak. So this is super interesting because my question really is like, where is the boundary?
Yeah, that's right.
Where is that boundary?
That's right, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So, it's going to be an interesting one today. Interesting one.
Yes.
You got some opening statements for us?
Yeah, no, obviously, I feel for me, again, you guys know how I be. I come from the maternal side of things. A lot of the times. But, I can kind of see how parents, especially mums, I feel like if you look at a lot of relationships when it comes to marriages and in-laws,
Yeah.
a lot of the times it's the mother-in-law that's mainly involved in that relationship. Dads tend to kind of step back a little bit and just let him be a man, let her be grown up kind of stance. But the mum's like, no, I need to know what's going on. I need to be in their business. What if she poisons my son? Or what if, he doesn't dress my daughter properly? Whatever it may be. So I do feel like a lot of the time, regardless of what situation they're in,
Yeah.
especially mums, we always kind of have that, you do have that protective thing going on at no matter what stage they are in their life. So I do feel like that is again, it's another big thing that we're not, as parents, we're not really taught to take ourselves through stages of growth when our children, we're just always there.
Yeah.
We're there when they're getting married. We're there when they're
Born.
courting.
Yeah.
We're there when they're getting married. So we feel like we should be there in the marriage as well. It's kind of like, you can't just shut me out, you know, kind of thing. I've been there all this time. So I feel like it's an expectation as well.
Yeah.
There's an expectation to be involved.
So I think that's powerful. I think that's powerful that you bring it out that way. And my thing is really, is that a valid or justified expectation? You're like, you're there when they're getting courting. You're there when they're courting. You're there when they're getting married. And I've said it, maybe seriously at the time, but I guess as I reflect in jest in some senses.
Yeah.
You know, we've said, you know, when Grace is out there dating, the guy comes over and says, young man says, okay, I want to take her to so-and-so place. And we say, yeah, that's fine. And we'll be there in the booth, you know.
But my table booked next, a couple tables away.
With the Pink Panther jacket on, you know, the low light seat, peering over the menus, just trying to see what's going on. But how legitimate is that really? Like, being involved in the courting phase, being involved in kind of, you know, like how much influence, how much kind of, what do they call it, TMI, how much like information is legitimate for us to have, kind of thing. And this is one of the things I found with Grace. As Grace has grown now, I found that, you know, she really wants to kind of demarcate her territory. Do you understand? She wants you to know that she's grown.
She be growing,
and it's like I don't have a problem with that. Like, and in reality, whoa, here we go now.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I do feel like it's a bit of a touchy subject, though, don't you think?
Of course. I think anyone,
they're all gonna flee the nest soon and go. You know, they're on separate ways to their marital homes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's one of those.
Yeah, I guess it can be. I guess it can be in many senses.
Forecasting emotional topic.
Yeah, I think the reality is that we have to be mature about it. We say this all the time. Marriage is really about maturity.
Yeah.
Marriage is about maturity. And as we talk about the influence and impact of parents in marriage, I think that's just as important as well. It's a vital key. It's a key piece of things. So I think that it's understandable for the young person to want to kind of set their kind of own tone and demarcate their territory. However, like from a biblical standpoint and also from just a community standpoint, like a well-being standpoint, how much is too much? We spoke about that previously in kind of a different context, but what do you guys think? Is it okay for parents, for a father and a mother to be involved in the marriage preparations, to be involved in the courting selection process, to be involved in planning the location of where their house is going to be, you know, and then maybe even, what do they call it?
When they should start having children.
I was coming to that, family planning. That's exactly,
have.
I was coming to that next, family planning, right? So are all those things really important? And are they all things that we feel that a parent or parents should be involved in? What do you guys think?
Well, you know what? It's funny. Even though you started that, I want us to kind of maybe take it to the beginning.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so you take that because I know you've got something to cover from the beginning.
You're playing. All right, so I think the main thing for me today was really to kind of consider things lightly from a biblical perspective as well, obviously. So, you know, obviously the scripture says that there is a time that comes when two will become one. Do you understand? And at that point in time, there's going to be this leaving from the home of the parent and kind of setting out into your own kind of space.
Kind of,
So, and the scripture's explicit about that. A time comes where you leave and you move out. Okay, so we acknowledge that. This time comes and it's at the point of union. But what does that mean in terms of counsel? What? Because the scripture also talks to us about wise counsel.
That's right.
The scripture also talks to us about fellowship.
That's right.
And these things are important. It talks about the older teaching the younger. So we hear all of these instructions, these directions. So what does that mean for the young couple in matrimony? What does it mean for them? So I want us to really think about those kind of things. We think about what are the pros and the cons. So let's dial it in a little bit. I think one of the major things for me is this. Who are your parents? All right. We've spoken so much about what we've spoken about. We've spoken about dysfunction. we've spoken about inheriting that dysfunction. We've been attracted to that dysfunction. We've spoken about kind of the influence in marriage itself to a degree. But now we're really trying to break it out. And what do you guys I really want to know what you guys out there are really thinking about this, because for me, I feel as though understanding who your parents are is key to determining how much your parents can give.
That's right.
Do you understand that? Because there's a difference between, I mentioned a moment ago, counsel and kind of that overbearing driving your family. Like a young man leaves home and determines he's getting married and he's going to have his own family. I don't think it's right for him to be puppeteered from outside of the relationship.
Right.
It's not only dangerous for the relationship itself, it's dangerous for him.
Yeah.
Because at the point at which potentially his parents are no more, at the point at which potentially there's no signal on his mum or dad's phone, he can't get through to them and he has to make a decision himself, he's then put into a very kind of challenging and awkward position. So I think permitting our children to develop that maturity naturally is key. I think that's key.
I mean, for me, I'm thinking of it from a female perspective, because even if we look at Ruth and Naomi, that's obviously Naomi wasn't Ruth's natural mother, but she was her mother-in-law, and she played a massive part, a massive role in how her life turned out later on down the line.
Absolutely.
Now, if Naomi was a terrible mother and also not very good mother-in-law, Ruth's destiny would have been completely different also. You know, so for me, as I'm thinking about the scenario and thinking about parental influence, obviously not even just your mother, your father influence, the person who actually, whoever it is that is nurturing you, who's rearing you, who's bringing you up. It could be uncle and auntie,
that's right, absolutely, that's right.
You know, so it's not always mum and dad kind of thing. So I'm just kind of, I'm just playing the scenario in my head and I'm just thinking to myself, wow, if Naomi wasn't, like my husband just said, you have to know your parents to determine what kind of influence you want them to have in your marriage. Now, Ruth knew Naomi very well, and she obviously thought, this is someone I want to follow. This is someone I want to have in my life throughout my life, in a sense. And that was a choice Ruth made. But then Naomi was a good influence. She helped to raise her. She helped to guide her, to give her the wisdom of an older woman who's experienced different kind of things, pain, trauma, loss, all that kind of stuff, wealth, whatever it may be. So, for me, it really does depend on who the parents are, because you're going to have parents who are, involved in their child's life, but they know their boundaries. They know their boundaries. They know how much influence they have on the child. And this is another thing. Some parents actually really know how much influence they have on their child. If they say to their child, you know what, honey, I really think the colour purple suits you, they'll automatically know purple. They automatically know that my child's going to go and buy a purple dress.
Reverence and respect for that parent.
She's going to wear, he or she's going to, pick that colour. But then, because they know they have that influence, as the child gets older, a parent who has wisdom will know that there's only so much I can say in this relationship, because I know if I say something to my child, they can run with that, and I don't want them running with everything I say. So it's really important who the parent is, and how much we draw from them.
Absolutely. So, like, parental identification is important, and obviously as you're growing, you're beginning. I mentioned to you last episode one before, I was saying to you that when we grew up, our dad was really key on us kind of being observers, like really being able to kind of take stock of our environment, understand where we are and what we were dealing with. And as you're growing, maturing, you're a young man, you're a young lady, you're developing, this is a key practice. It's key for us to be able to ascertain the terrain where we're getting involved in, specifically when you're courting and before you kind of enter into that matrimonial home. But even more so, this is important when you're married. You need to be able to acknowledge the temperament of your spouse. You need to be able to ascertain whether they are okay, they're not okay. And then again, this feeds into rearing your children, and the kind of cycle continues in that sense. So being aware of your environment, being aware of the people in your community is very, very important. And it's not something you can read in a book and just kind of learn. It's something that we have to practice and develop over time. So there's another thing I'm thinking about, and it's, okay, so we understand, and obviously, guys, we've got limited time here, so we can't really go deep into everything. So if there's anything you want us to hold back on or kind of expound on, just chuck that in the comments. So obviously, understanding your parent is key. So are they kind of overbearing? Are they kind of a controller? Are they the kind of, you know, the inward looking, very kind of meek and kind of somehow kind of person? Which type of nature and character does your parent exhibit? The second thing is, and we talk about this practically every episode, I'm chucking it out there, but what's the vision for your marriage? What's the vision for your life? And this is a very, very key thing, because understanding your parent and understanding or deciphering the vision for your life, the direction you're going in, enables you to evaluate how much you draw from your parent. And like, I know we're talking about marriage. I'm still just talking about this in a kind of an individualistic manner, so to speak. So just as a man, as I'm growing up a young man and I'm developing and maybe starting out on a career pathway, I'm going to look at my parents. And this is difficult for many people to do, because we're so close to them that it becomes extremely hard for us to kind of tear away and see them in an objective light. You know, many young men's dad is their superhero, and their mum is like a queen to them. So it's very difficult for us to kind of see them outside of that light, because they've reared us and raised us for so long. As Sarah said, what's important, first I decipher who my parents are, then I decipher and determine where I want to go. The next thing you need to do is, you need to kind of look at those things, contrast, and use a compare and contrast those and say, okay, look, so I'm looking at where I want to go. I'm looking at the life of my parents. I remember speaking to a young man once, and he said, yeah, I'm better than my parents. I'm much better than my parents. And I will be, and I was just like, I was thrown back at the brashness and the confidence that he had. And, you know, generally you'd hear a parent, especially in African culture, parents say, oh, you know, you will be better than me. It's a prayer that parents pray over their children, you know, you'll be better than me, you go further than me.
Yeah, you always pray the next generation continues to excel higher
You
and higher.
understand, yeah. And I've been praying with certain men, I've heard them, they've in our times of prayer, they'd said, our children will stand on our shoulders and they will see a bit further than we've seen and go further than we've gone. So it's definitely in the heart of men, especially, I'm familiar with those in African culture, to have their children go further than them. But when I heard this young man speak like this, I was kind of like, whoa. So like, I don't know if that was
literally. Really?
Yeah, no, but firstly, he wasn't. Okay, we won't talk about his culture, but the interesting thing was just the way he perceived himself in light of his parents. And I think this is important. It's important. His parents were like, they were very kind of intelligent people. I believe they were quite wealthy as well, like working like very senior, like kind of political government jobs. Like they were doing extremely well. So this was interesting in itself, just to hear him say this and kind of see where he was shooting for. Understanding who you are and who they are and where you're going determines how much you can take from them. If my parent is an extremely bad money manager, and I now working in the city or working, I don't know, flying abroad all the time, I'm a pilot, and I'm earning quite a good wage, I'd have to be very mindful about taking financial advice from one of those parents, because I may end up, even though I've got more income coming in, my balances may resemble theirs. My patterns and habits may resemble theirs if I take that advice and that counsel for them. The same goes for relationships. The same goes for maybe personal hygiene, conduct, all of those things. So we're borrowing these things from our parents, firstly, just naturally. You know, a lot of these things are nurtured. The way that we're raised, the habits and the kind of cultures of our parents are what we call automatically kind of dropped into us. Basically, it's built in, it's baked in part and parcel of our rearing. We go to the places they go, we speak the way they speak, we have some of their mannerisms. So when we get to the point where we're determining where we want to go, this is very important. And I'm bringing it up at this light because the question is this, and I remember having a debate with one of my brothers about this years ago, and essentially it's can you give what you do not have? Can you give what you do not have? Because parents mean well. Yeah. Parents, good parents mean well. Many parents mean well. You understand? Yeah. Yet the challenge is sometimes, like one of our old mentors used to say, he said, you can be extremely sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. You understand? I used to give this example in Bible study years and years ago about a parent and their child at the train track. And they're at the train track, and a child kind of wanders over to the track and falls in. It's a live rail. So they fall in, and they're their child's being shocked. So the parent quickly looks around and says, what can I do? What can I do? And they see this kind of long metal pole on the side. They say, okay, I'm going to use that. So they grab it. It will reach it. I can push the child off of the track. And what they didn't understand was once they use that metal wire, when they touch the child, the electricity is conducted through that. And if we're talking about something live, and it goes from the child and actually electrocutes them. They were sincere. They really wanted to help, but they didn't understand what they were doing. So in that scenario, they, in fact, endangered themselves and made things worse rather than making things better. And this is very, very important when we're thinking about and talking about things like this, the influence of a parent. Some of us who are parents already, I'm not just saying this for us to look upwards at our parents, but we need to look at, like, introspectively at ourselves.
That's right.
Because we too are going to be an influence on those, the generation that's next to us. So this is very, very important stuff. Very important stuff. You've got me going off on one, yeah. So.
It's good. It's fun.
Can you give what you don't have? So this is something we need to think about. And if you've got a parent, I'll kind of camp on this, but if you've got a parent who's willing to learn, who's developing themselves perpetually, they're growing, that's the kind of parent that I think I would be open to learning from and drawing from. But if you've got a parent who's kind of fixed in their ways, the old minister used to say that their mind is thoroughly, like cement, thoroughly stirred and completely set. So it's like there's no changing their mind, there's nothing, and they're fixed in their ways. It's like that's not necessarily the type of parent that I think is useful in counselling in every area of life. You know, life, there are corporate tenets of life that God has instituted that will remain the same. Yet we're operating in different terrains today, and it's about learning how to navigate those terrains.
Yeah. That's great. I think for me, one of the things that I keep thinking about when it comes to parental influence is parents who feel like they did it all wrong. Now they want to make it right.
Vicarious living.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they want to make it right, but through their children because their ship has sailed, kind of thing. And I feel that's a big problem.
Yes.
That particular parent, that particular type of influence is a big problem. However, I feel that one's very subtle. That's a more subtle one because, they're not really going to be too forceful. They don't really come across too forceful. It's more little drops of nuggets, little seeds that they sow, and they might make a statement, they might make a comment, they might do something and then be like, oh, sorry, I didn't, So for me, it's realizing that you have to keep your guard up with your marriage. Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter who it is. Let it be your mum, your dad, your sister, your closest friend. We all have to keep our guards up in marriage because there's blatant influence and there's subtle underhand influences, that come in. And we might not pick these things up because they're done so gently, so smoothly, in love. Again, you do have children who reverence their parents a lot. And they never want to disrespect. They never want to step out of line. No matter how old they get, they always want to be in line, kind of thing. So for some children in that scenario, it will be quite hard for them to detect these things, because they've been brought up to be, extremely reverential. They fear their parents a lot. They don't know how to say, Mum, you know what? I've got this. I know how to, change a nappy. It's okay. I'm on my second baby now. It's all right, kind of thing. That's just an example. It's just an example of sometimes how, the influence that does come in, it doesn't, as we're saying it so loud and so blatantly, they're not always so obvious. And it's those ones that I truly believe that we have to constantly look out for, the seeds that are not so obvious that are coming from our parents, and then obviously parents who are trying to live their life through their children, some go a step further trying to live through their grandchildren.
Yes.
Okay, they can't get through to you, so their next level is, I might be able to get to my grandkids, so I'm going to support in this, I'm going to put finances into it, I'm going to fund them, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Or to be like, grandma thinks that you should, I think you should, or granddad thinks, do you know what I mean? So there are different things that we do have to look out for, but then again, not every parent is out to get you, kind of thing. We're not saying that all parents are out to get your marriage and out to throw it off the cliff or anything. But our marriages are something that we have to constantly guard. We have to constantly protect. And a lot of marriages have ended up in divorce, have ended up in separations, have completely been destroyed because they haven't had their guards up.
Yeah.
And and sometimes it's the little things that begin to take the bricks off one by one. It's not always just a big crash that comes and everything comes tumbling down. These things happen slowly and subtly until, the guy's just like, that's it, I'm done with you and your mom, I'm done with you and your dad, your sisters, I'm done with all of you, I'm gone. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's just like, it's a shock. What do you mean? No, and sometimes it's not always that the influence is affecting the child.
Yeah.
It's affecting the spouse.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can see what I can't see, I can see what you can't see, kind of thing.
And they're accustomed to it. You'd have been like the daughter or the son is accustomed to their parent. They're acclimatized to that. So depending on how much involvement the spouse has had in the relationship, how close the proximity of him or her to the family and the kind of development over time. I totally agree. Yeah.
But and another thing for me is that parents just constantly want to protect, and they always feel we're doing what's right for our child, right? And then sometimes it's not even for our child. Sometimes it's like, okay, obviously if I protect my child, then I'm obviously protecting my inheritance, I'm protecting my generation, I'm protecting my so it might not even be the child. Sometimes they're still looking out, it could be
for
a thing
themselves.
They're still looking out for themselves. So for me, there's just, I feel like there's so many layers to this. There's so many layers because the whole journey starts from when the child arrives. The whole journey starts from when the child arrives, and a few of us get to break away. A few people get to come out of the headlock or the strong arms that they're under, but some don't. Some don't. And I feel like this topic is really important for those that haven't really broken away from that parental influence, because one thing that I definitely want
make it sound like a headlock.
One thing that I definitely want people to do is just to analyze their situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take time, because like I said, I might not see what Ezekiel sees, and Ezekiel might not see what I see.
That's true. Very true.
But sometimes it's good for us to just take him in and just to reflect. Because if you're facing problems in your marriage right now, and you know that your parents or your family might not be your parents,
just an external influence. Think external influences in terms of what Sarah's saying now.
Exactly. You do have to just stop and think to yourself, you know what? Where could it be coming from? Where could this problem be coming from? And always looking at all areas, covering all grounds, leaving none untouched. Okay, because the whole purpose is to stay married.
That's right.
And not just staying married, but staying married in love, and staying married for the for the fact that you love each other and you want to be together. And it's not just, let's just stay, and then when the kids grow up, we'll go our separate ways kind of thing. This is a long-term commitment and a lifetime commitment. So we constantly have to be evaluating what's going on, evaluating the issues that are coming up, where they might be coming from. And I just feel like this is just like one thing to highlight, in a sense, because some people overlook it. Some people overlook it. Some people overlook the fact that their sister might have made a statement, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, they're acting up.
Yeah.
But where did they hear that from?
All right, let's break into this a little further, and let's take a high level approach a bit. Let's talk about some of the pros and some of the cons.
Because there are lots of pros.
So we've touched on bits and pieces now. So you kick us off. Let's talk about some of the pros of parental influence.
Well, for me, some of the pros is that, again, it depends on who your parents are.
That's right.
And I truly believe we have to label that point. It depends on who your parents are, okay? Because that just depends on the outcome anyway, right? So for me, it's the wisdom that comes with age.
Come on now.
Experience.
That's right.
Okay. The journeys that they've been on, right? The advice that they might give, the good advice that they give, especially if you have parents who are faith based and that they love the Lord, and they wouldn't want everybody says, I don't want my child, I would never hurt my child, whatever. But when you have like a biblical background, biblical understanding, and you're not going based on your emotions, you're raising your child biblically, in a sense that, okay, this is what I think, but look, what does God say at the end of it all? Kind of thing, So that for me,
so that's a big one. So as much as you said experience, and you're saying the wisdom, the faith impact is massive. So if you do have parents that are kind of deeply rooted in the Christian faith, there's a massive advantage that you have there. And it's almost like it's almost like the advantage we have from having the scriptures. The scriptures are there for us to read and to study and to learn from.
Yeah.
And if we've got well practiced believing seniors, we're able to draw and learn from their tangible experience with the Most High God.
Yeah, because for me, if you're experiencing something in your relationship, and you know a parent says, "Hey, come, I'll talk to him, I'll talk to her," you know, that's different from saying, "You know what, sweetheart, I think you need to go and pray about it. Okay, here are a few scriptures. This is what I used when me and your dad was experiencing certain things. Here are some of the scriptures. I've never shared them with you, but here you go, because this is the stage that you're in right now, and I think you're going to need these quotes."
That's right.
You know, and then passing that on. Checking in 2 days later, how's the prayer going? Are you checking in on things like that. That for me is so much more valuable than, "Oh, I'll talk to them for you," or, you know, let me see, let me get involved, let me see what's going to happen, kind of thing. But taking it to God and saying, "You know what, yes, I'm your mum, I know you're coming to me about this situation, I know you want me to take sides, but hun, what does the scripture say? What's God saying? Have you prayed about it? You know, did you just shout and, you know, slam the door and come and then phone me? I don't have a problem with you phoning me. However, yeah, go back to your word. Even you and your husband sit down and read the scriptures together."
So spiritual support and accountability 100%. Is a massive advantage if you're so inclined. Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Definitely.
That's really rich. So question to you guys. So how many of you actually have had meaningful and rich spiritual support for your marriage from your parents? Okay, and it could be, I'll kind of extend it. It could be in the kind of nurture kind of sequence that I spoke about earlier on. So, you know, from the time that you've grown up, they've encouraged you to pray, and they've told you, like, in any circumstance, you know, when you're challenged, you can pray, you can go to God. Or more specifically, in the example Sarah's given, a son or a daughter has gone to their parents, and their parents have said, "You know, I've used these scriptures, pray about this, why don't you try fasting, speak to this maybe spiritual advisor and see how the pastor at the church, or, you know, kind of sister, see how that, or sister, your aunt, your uncle, who's kind of more experienced spiritually in that area." That's powerful. Anything else you want to tackle on that?
Well, there are lots of pros. There are lots of pros. I can't think of them all now, but if you can think of pros, feel free to drop them in the comments.
That's super.
Yeah, you know. Another pro of having parental influence is that I feel like you do kind of constantly have a support network. You're not left on your own.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like that's one of the dangers. People getting married and shutting their doors and no one really knowing what's going on, and anything. And if it's a negative relationship, you don't really want to be shutting people out. You know, you want to at least have a few people that you can confide in, whether that is the parent or, you know, an outside person. But then, you know, having that support network is a big thing, because nobody knows what's going to happen. You know, a lot of the times, you know, when people get married, they start a family, it's new to them. Having parents there to support in the beginning of that journey is very helpful. You know, especially just get things right. Again, depends on, you know, culturally how things are. Some people are just like, "Oh no, I'll read every book, I'll watch every YouTube video, I'll be fine." You know, whereas some people want that traditional effect. You know, in their when they have children, they want the baby wash, they want the press, they want, you know, all these kind of things that they know culturally this is what we do. You know, so having that support, having support, I think is another good thing about having like the parental.
Cool. That's powerful. So what about if I now ask you about some of the cons? Now we've touched on some of those already, but
let you do the cons.
Yeah, really?
I've done the pros, you can do the cons.
Okay. Yeah, I think like I'm saying, we've touched on some of those already, and I think really just going deep. You made a reference just now to the idea of, you know, the parent wanting to protect the child, and the last part of what you said just a moment ago was that, you know, no one knows what's going to happen when you close the doors. And I think that's an allusion to some of the psychological and spiritually negative scenarios people have gone through. So for example, if someone's gone through 3 or 4 or 5 divorces before, if someone's come out of a very abusive relationship before, if someone is kind of insecure in themselves, those things feed into the relationship. So it may be that a parent, maybe a dad who's well experienced with divorce, he's had 3 or 4 divorces in the past, his mind towards marriage is typically, it's not going to work. You know, son, I know she means well, I know you mean well, but it's not going to work. And, you know, that kind of...
sabotage.
Yeah, that kind of sabotage. That kind of sabotage really can affect the integrity of the marriage before things have even kicked off.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It's just like, you know, you come to see him and the son wants to see the dad and he says, oh yeah, dad, we need your blessing. And he's like, son, I can only really give you a little bit because I know how these things go. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, marriage isn't really a bad investment. So it's just like he doesn't really want to be fully committed in that sense.
Yeah.
Or you may have another dad who's gone through physical abuse. He's been physically abused by a former wife or in former relationship. Maybe never been married, this guy, but he's had relationships where he's been physically abused by a woman. I know some people think that doesn't happen, but it does. It does. Trust me, it does.
It does.
And he's been physically, verbally, kind of. My goodness. He's had physical, verbal abuse, and so from his perspective now, it's like, son, you know, you need to make sure that you've got some protection. And he's not talking about the kind of protection you're typically talking about in a relationship. He's talking about it's something else. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you need to keep some gloves in the house just in case. Or
goodness.
Do you know what I mean? It's like you make sure you wear a couple layers and all this kind of stuff. Like, so
with one eye open.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things are feeding into this idea that marriage doesn't work, or women are not to be trusted, or you won't find peace in a marriage. And these things are really, really dangerous because they can bear the fruit of the parents' fear, basically. So, and that's why I think that when I mentioned earlier to you guys about really knowing your parent, it's important to be able to understand. You know, some parents are wise, extremely wise in some areas. Some parents are challenged in some areas. Some parents are deficient in some areas, and we need to be able to evaluate, because those deficiencies can easily be translated to someone's marriage. I think we gave the example before. We normally talk about it on coaching, and it was one of my brothers that shared it with me years and years ago. It's like when you think about a relationship, you've got a husband and a wife, and that husband and a wife have two parents and two parents. And when you look at those two parents actually have their own parents. So when you kind of draw out the anatomy of a relationship, you've got myself and yourself, then you've got your parents, and you've got my parents. So that's four people already kind of above us that feed into this relationship, plus us, which makes six. Then if we go a layer above that, and it's really about examining how much of what we establish today is our own versus how much we establish today is inherited. And these things are very, very important, because it can be dangerous. In a marriage where there are six people, you understand? I remember there was a joke, this was years ago, I can't place it exactly, but it was something like the man would come home from work and dinner wasn't ready, basically, and it would be like about an hour or 2 hours before he came home from work and dinner was prepared. And the scenario was kind of told from the husband's side and from the wife's side, and essentially what had happened is both the husband and the wife were well-meaning. It really got really intense, and later on they kind of established, I think they went for counsel, and I think the relationship was about to break up. Then they sought counsel from someone, and they said, what's going on? And I think the daughter said something, the wife said something to the effect of, well, when she grew up in the house she grew up in, her mum would make food 2 hours after dad came home, because he liked to shower, he liked to take a rest for an hour, XYZ, so she prepared food that time. And his problem was,
I ain't your daddy.
No. His problem was, I want food immediately, because when he in his parental home, his dad worked in an office. So when his dad came home, his mum and dad would make an arrangement. The food would be ready immediately when he got home. They were both well-meaning, trying to do what they were taught to do from their parents. But when they came into their matrimonial home, there was conflict, because the man said, I want my food straight away. The woman said, I should serve your food in 2 hours. But in actuality, there was no agreement, no congruence between them, because they were doing what they had inherited from before. And that goes across the board in terms of emotion, spirituality, and all of the things we've spoken about today.
It also shows, in that scenario, that as a couple, they never really sat down to discuss certain things from their childhood, from their parents. So, you know, and this is the thing we talk about all the time: communicating and having hard talk and pressing, pressing in, and even like questions that draw things out of your spouse, to remember things that happened when they were younger and all that kind of stuff, to really discuss, so that you really know each other, so you know each other, kind of thing, you know. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so you're talking about advice, input, guidance. So there's mentorship, all of these things spiritually, naturally, that you can get from your parents. So when we talk about going beyond that, what about things that we disagree on? All right, so I made a point a moment ago about, you know, and I wanted to elaborate on that. So let's think about this for a moment. So some parents might say, we have to stay connected, and I need to continue to give you all the counsel you need, because you don't know what's going to happen when you close the door, like you said. You understand? So there's that kind of fear approach. But what about the scenarios where we're moving into an area where there is a disagreement in the house, kind of like what I just said just a moment ago with the food? Basically, you disagree with me over something, I disagree with you over something. We don't really have that problem too often. And then we go to our parents, and our parents take our side. Your parents take your side, my parents take my side. What do we do in a situation like that, where we are being reinforced by our parents? We're being reinforced to stand our ground. My son, you are right. It is right for you to desire Eba 7 days a week. And then your parents say, my daughter, you are correct. It's good for you to want to give him a diverse diet on a regular basis. So what are we doing that when we're kind of, the people we're seeking counsel from are giving us an influence that doesn't actually bring peace in the house, but actually reinforces the drama?
I mean, this is the whole point of this conversation.
Come on now.
Because a couple has to get to a place where they say, your parents think you're right, my parents think we're right. That means neither of us are right. So we have to take this externally. Yeah. We have to go and seek a third party who isn't going to be biased. You know, obviously not every, and the funniest thing is, a lot of people do like to keep their relationships in the family. A lot of people don't like to take it outside the doors. They don't want to take it to an external person, because they're going to think, you know, oh, someone else knows our business, or they're going to judge us, how they're going to look at us, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of people don't even like the idea of taking their relationship outside of their family boundaries, but that's the only thing to really, really do in that situation. I remember, like, we'll have a conversation, or, you know, or we'll be going through something. I'm going to call your dad. Straight up, I'm like, I'm calling your dad, you know, kind of thing. Because I know your dad is not a biased person. He's very, very logical, and he's full of wisdom. And, you know, he's never once said, Owen is right, or Zeke, do you know what I mean? He's never once said that, you know, kind of thing. It's always very much he'd listen, and he would listen, and then he'll be like, okay, and then he'll share his opinion. Obviously, it'll be like a whole proverb, but, you know, at the end of it. But it's not, I never leave that conversation feeling, oh my gosh, I'm so wrong, Obviously, there's times I'm like, all right, please, I'm sorry, you know, kind of thing. But it's never one-sided, you know, and that's good, because, you know, I thank God for that. I really do. I really thank God for my in-laws, you know, because some people are in a situation where they go to their in-laws and their in-laws break them down. Their in-laws make them feel like they're the ones that are in the wrong all the time, and their child is not in the wrong. And you know, sometimes that spouse won't even, you know, break away from that circle, because that's their comfort zone. This is all they know. This is family, you know, kind of thing. And it's not, it isn't wisdom. It isn't wisdom. You know, if you are in a relationship and, you know, you're finding that your parents are always siding with you, and, you know, it's like that movie we watched one time. Tell me. The one where the guy, he lost his job. The company went down. He lost his job. He did something. How many years
ago was this?
It was just like a couple months ago.
Okay, I'm listening.
And he applied for a new job, but then the boss of the new job was the husband of this woman he knew. Yes. But remember, and he didn't get the job.
Yeah.
And then he started to lose the house and everything. And then the wife found out that he completely messed up. And instead of the mother-in-law to help situations,
that's right.
she made things even worse.
Yeah. But why? Why did she make them worse? What happened? Do you remember?
Right, exactly. And her daughter was they were expecting their second baby. And you know, and the man's he's trying, he's been, you know, the wife's kicked him out and the mother-in-law's like, yeah, get out. And then
he was reforming.
Yeah, and he was changing, but then the mother-in-law's like, oh, this is what your dad did to me. Don't trust any man. See, I told you this was gonna happen. Da, 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 da. Oh, baby, don't worry. Mama will take care of you. You know, kind of thing. And even at the hospital, she was like, when they gave her, like, what are you doing here? I was so.
Was that for the new baby, or she wasn't well?
For the new baby.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when she went and she was calling her husband, and then the mum was like, she was calling her husband, and the mum was like, why are you calling your husband? I'm the one that's here. Why is she not calling my name?
Listen, we'll put the film in the description.
Definitely.
We might have to do that for you guys.
But this is people's lives daily. Women are experiencing heavy influence from their mothers. Men are experiencing heavy influence from their mothers, from their fathers.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the situation any better. You know, so again, that's like a con when you're constantly listening to the parent, and instead of, because even I was just like, logically, this woman isn't thinking. Yeah. She's clearly not thinking for herself.
She was emotional. She was driven by emotions, and this is
But she was clearly not thinking for herself, because everything her mother said, she did. You know, and again, I think she was the only child as well. She didn't have she didn't have any siblings. But the mum, what the key thing is here, the mum was already broken. She had a terrible relationship. She didn't have good experience in marriage. So when it came to that point in her daughter's life, she only reacted the way she would have reacted if it was her. You know, she didn't stop to think, okay, this isn't my life.
This isn't her
her ex-husband. Yeah. You know, this man, he's changing, he's trying here, you know, and take a step back and say, honey, you know what? You deal with this, because I dealt with it my way and it didn't work out, you know. But then it's pride.
Yeah,
there's pride to say...
Yeah, that's right.
You know, sometimes there's pride to say, I told you not to marry him. I told you not to marry her. You know, now look at what's going on. Instead of constantly bringing some kind of peace or whatever, you know. So it's a big thing. And I really feel like it's one of those... It is one of those situations, scenarios, topics when we're talking about parental influence. And remember, like we said, we're not just talking about your mum, your dad. We're talking about anybody who has, you know, who plays a major role as a parent for you, kind of thing. You know, so it's important for us to constantly evaluate them. You know, and not to say you're evaluating them because they're wrong or whatever. Yeah. But it's to constantly evaluate them to see if, you know, what they're saying actually lines up to what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Okay,
that's powerful.
If what they're saying does not line up with what you're trying to achieve, remember, you got married because you said for better or for worse till death do us part. If the advice that you're getting is not for better, for worse, or till death do you part, you know, for richer, for poorer, whichever it may be, the vows that you made, should you really be taking what they're saying on board? Okay. And even if you take what they're saying on board, you can take it lightly with a pinch of salt and say, okay, you know, mum, dad, thanks for the advice. I do appreciate the fact that you're even here to give me the advice. But you know what? We're going to seek counsel, or we're going to pray about it, or we're going to do this kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I think that's super powerful. One of the things that I guess I drew out is that if we're not evaluating our parents, the influences that come into our relationship, then we don't really care for our relationship above that of the influence and the counsel we're getting. And it's like, it may kind of seem hard or kind of, unfair, but we have to evaluate things. We need to prioritize things, and a time comes that we spoke about at the open that you're going to say, okay, I'm leaving my house and I'm going to kind of form an extension of that house. I'm going to build my own house. I'm going to stand on my own. And when I stand like that, that means I have to be responsible enough to make the decisions that I need to make. And that those decisions may be, I'm going to listen to dad's counsel. I'm going to listen to mum's counsel. And I'm going to objectively make my own decision for what's best in terms of where we're going and what I want to set up for us. And I think that the challenge there is some people think that it's wrong. It's wrong not to yield to what your mum says. It's wrong not to yield to what your dad says. And I think there is a time and a place, you understand, for being like you spoke about earlier on, so that vicarious living, where the parent wants to live through the child. When you're a child, children are at the will of their parent, at the whim of their parent, I should say. So it's like, if the parent says we're going here, then you go there. And if they say we're going there, you go there. And that is the way things go, because you're at that age and you're under that governance. And as you grow, and not just grow, but begin to set up your own house, your own establishment, that covering in that same vein, I'm not talking about the kind of house covering, but that covering in that same vein does lessen and wane more and more. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that it's not a wrong thing to say, I really appreciate what you've said, and I don't mean any dishonor, but I've decided to take another course of action. And in some respect, in some in some scenarios, I myself would acknowledge my son, my daughter, and say, you know what, I quite respect that you've made your own decision. You're articulating to me why you think that's the best decision to make. And obviously, I can't hold, you're no longer a 5-year-old, and I've got you on the kind of, that leash that some parents use on their children that I don't too agree with. But
Safety.
yeah. So it's like, so you've got that. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's no longer that. It's now we're kind of in a mature state and a mature phase of life. So I think that's really important. I think it's important for us to be able to really know where we're going, so we really know the inputs that are valuable in terms of the direction that we're heading in.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I mean, and I also think that that's why it's good to have a good dynamic of people that you are interacting with in your relationship.
Yeah.
And you're not just keeping it close to family, right? Because I think of a scenario sometimes where you might have families where they're quite well off, and the child marries someone who's not as well off.
Yep, we've seen that in the movies.
Yeah, who's not from such a well off background.
Your favorite Indian movies.
Boy, if you know you like a little Bollywood, is it Nollywood Bollywood movie? Let me know. I mean, we see a lot of those scenarios in there, but it just gets me thinking. When in that situation, you've got the girl, she comes from a well-off family, and the husband doesn't really come from a well-off family. He's middle class, and he's had to grind through life, and he's made his way up, but he's not where her father is.
Yeah.
Right, but he's done his own and he's doing good, right? But she's been brought up from a very high level lifestyle, and she's willing to drop it because she loves him and she wants to get married and whatever. And then they find themselves getting into financial situations, and she automatically going to her parents, and he's like, "No, I'll sort it out. I can do this. Give me time," kind of thing. And she's constantly like, "No, I'm going to daddy. Daddy's gonna write me a check. Don't worry about it. I need this sorted out now," kind of thing. Obviously, she sounds like someone who doesn't have patience. She doesn't want to struggle, whatever. But the fact that she knows that she has that open door
that support network,
to her parents, it makes it challenging for her husband to get to where he needs to get to with her, for his family. Because as soon as he puts a foot wrong, his father-in-law's involved. The minute he puts a foot wrong, the mother-in-law's involved. So those things, they do not help the relationship. Obviously, we're talking here about people who are quite well off, but that it might not even be a situation where someone's really well off and the father-in-law can write checks or the mother-in-law can write checks, whatever. It could be anything, really.
Knowledge, insight, experience.
Exactly,
that's right. Yeah, of course.
So for me, it's always about ensuring that you're not belittling your spouse for your parents, for their influence, for their knowledge, for their money, for their wisdom. Because and again, it's something that we have to remember in marriage. The minute our spouse starts to feel unworthy, unappreciated, disrespected, all of these things begin to shift, and it begins to change the marital dynamics. They can become closed. They don't want to talk to you anymore. They automatically know if something happens, you're going to your parents anyway, kind of thing. So it begins to break things down. Yeah. And people might not see it like that. People won't see it like that until it happens. Yeah. Until that bridge is broken and there's a massive gap between the husband and the wife, they won't always see it. So for me, it's about understanding that yes, our parents are there. Yes, they're full of wisdom. Yes, they can help us. Yes, they have influence in certain areas. However, if we are making our spouse feel like they're they're not worth
less than, yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's a massive problem. It's a massive problem, and then obviously we have to remember as well that we're from two different places, two completely different places, and we're from two completely different places coming together, you know. And then you might have a family that you know, they come together, and one family is very domineering and the other one's very calm, not so domineering, quite relaxed. Son, you know, do your thing, we're here to support you. Not that they're just like, oh, whatever, we don't care. No, but they're just not as pressuring, they're not as domineering to their child. And then you've got the other side who are very involved, very domineering. You should do it this way, honey. Honey should live here. Honey, oh my gosh, have you seen this house? Buy this house here, whatever. Oh, look, the baby's going to look great in this. And then it's constantly that the family who is not so domineering, they're now going to begin to push away. They're going to begin to push away, not just from their in-law, but from their in-laws. You know, they're going to start to have that thing where, oh, we don't really want nothing to do with these lot. But you've got two children who have come together, and this is the dynamic that they're living with. And again, it caused massive problems, because then no one's going to see their child being treated a certain way and not say anything about it. And then it just kind of, you know, so for me, it's about us protecting them at the same time.
That's important. That's
powerful.
Powerful.
You know, because it's about us ensuring that our in-laws don't fight. You get what I'm trying to say? So even though the influence might affect me and you, if we're not keeping our eyes out, if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, it's going to ripple out affect others.
That's powerful.
You
that's
know,
really
so
powerful.
Yeah, that's just what I think.
That's super powerful. I think there's so much to go on here. I think one of the last points I wanted to make, I know we'll probably go to comments and we'll close out, but one of the last points I wanted to make is on the pros, and this might seem kind of like a weird kind of perspective, but it's amazing because we're able to learn from their biggest mistakes. So you spoke about the wisdom and the experience, and a pro of having influence from our parents are that if they're open and they are in the kind of, they're not ashamed to reveal themselves and to be kind of transparent with us. You know, some parents are really closed and they don't kind of they don't open up about things that may have them appear to be you know, not the superstars that they're perceived to be. So if it doesn't shine a good light on them, they will take the stance of, I won't tell you. But for those that will open and let you know, their biggest mistakes are actually fuel for us to go forward, because we can learn from those and ensure we don't repeat those same mistakes. And I think that's really important. I think it's important. And then this again comes from really understanding your parent, really understanding the type of parent they are. Are they the kind of parent that will kind of, you know, sugarcoat things and not really let you know everything that really happened? Or are they the kind of parent that will just be straight with you? You've got a good relationship, you have great communication, and they'll talk to you and tell you and warn you even in certain instances about mistakes they've made. Not to steer your decisions, but to give you insight on things that you're yet to experience. And I think that's powerful. I think that's a powerful space for us to have. When we have that understanding, we can acknowledge those advantages and those benefits that we have from our parents. So one thing, I'll throw a question to you guys out there in the internet world. What are the best and worst traits that you've inherited from your parents? What are the best and the worst traits that you've inherited from your parents? If you're watching this after the fact, chuck it in the comments, man. Chuck it in the comments and let us know. What's the best trait that you've got from your parents? I don't want to hear my nose, my eyes, my beauty. Come on, I want us to go deep, a little lower. Even if you're gonna add those physical traits, talk to us about, you know, some of the characteristics or some of the mindsets that you've developed based on your parents. On that note, I said we've been busy working away. We do have the Marriage Matters Mindset Checklist. You can pick it up at blog.godlifeco.com/marriage. And that's really about, it's a way for you to evaluate the strength of your marriage mindset in 10 minutes or less. So don't be a stranger. Get out there and have a look at that. We got anything more you want to go through before we get to the comments?
No, not really. I just feel that, you know, for me, you know, just personally for me, you know, just as a child growing up, you know, growing up in different environments in a sense, growing up in an African environment, a Caribbean environment, growing up in East London, you know, you saw a lot of things. And, you know, I do feel that sometimes the choices of wanting to get it right starts early. It does start early because, you know, a lot of us, we just live our day-to-day lives, and, you know, a lot of people don't even think about marriage for quite a while. But some people think about marriage quite early. They look at relationships around them and begin to evaluate them and say to them, you know, I really don't think I want that kind of life. Or some go, I really want that kind of life, you know. But for me, it you know, it was something that I kind of determined from quite young that mine has to be different. And I truly believe that it's a decision that we make early. Some can make the decision today. If you've, you know, again, it's for you to evaluate. It's for you to look at your relationship and look at your marriage and say to yourself, you know what, enough is enough, because you can see the good and the bad that's taking place, you know. But for some of us, we made the decisions early to say, you know what, that's them, this is me. And I want mine to be different. I don't want mine to look like that. I don't want mine to look like uncles and aunties. I don't want mine to look like mums and dads. Right? Let's just be real. You know, I don't want mine to look like mum and dad. You know, some of us, our parents are not still together. You know, some of us, our parents went their separate ways from early, you know. And as a child, you understand that effect. You understand how that does affect you, you know. So as you grow and you know to yourself, oh, one day you want to start a family, and you don't want your child to go through what you went through as a child, you make that decision early to say, okay, this I'm happy to take, this I am not, you know, kind of thing. So yeah, for me, it was definitely a decision that I made early to, you know, really evaluate those around me and how I allowed them to influence me, you know. And again, I give all thanks to God, you know, for changing me as a person, for changing my mindset as a person through scriptures, through ministry, through, you know, accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, through changing my walk, changing my life, you know, kind of thing. And again, that does play a massive influence, because if we're dealing with people who, you know, if we're in families where our parents don't have a faith background, they don't have a particular ethos that they live by, or, you know, for them it's just, whatever happens, you take tomorrow as it comes, and we'll deal with tomorrow when it arrives, kind of thing. No planning, no prepping, you know. So for me, it's definitely something that I do believe that you do have to make that decision now. For all of you who are watching this that are not yet married, that have not yet walked down the aisle, that have not yet tied yourselves to another person, you know, that's one thing that I would say, that it's a decision that you make now. You know, I do. We have a friend, and, you know, she's already set. She already knows there's only so much that her parents can have in her relationship. You know, and she knows that, you know, that with certain things you have to keep them at arm's length, because she's evaluating these things. She's evaluating these things, and she kind of knows, okay, you know what, I want mine to be successful. Yes. Okay, I don't want mine to end up, you know, like anyone else's. I want mine to be mine. So because I want mine to be mine, I have to make this decision now to evaluate. Yeah. You know, so yeah, that's what I'd say.
Powerful stuff. Come on, guys, chuck those comments in the box, in the chat box. I want to know, what are the traits? What's your best and what's your worst trait? Remember, this is the safe zone. This is the safe zone, so you can chuck it in here. So you're saying to me,
so what's your best?
What's my best trait?
Because your dad's lovely.
Yeah, I'd say my mum is tenacious. I think maybe, okay, another way of saying that is maybe stubborn. She's extremely tenacious. Yeah. And I think I definitely adopted that from her. I think when I was younger, I used to think that was my dad's trait. But I think as I matured, I acknowledged that was really from my mum. I think I really have got her tenacity. My dad is a go-getter. Like he's driven. You know, but you know it's funny. You know what's funny? Yeah, the funny thing is,
that to all y'all.
yeah. The funny thing is, it's like I see a lot of those. There's a lot of kind of overlap in the traits between my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
They said they were really good friends when they're younger. I don't know if it's because of that or what, but they probably spent a lot of time together. But I feel as though Drive. Just there were days where my dad used to run his printing press. He was a reprographic designer. We used to be there with him, and like he'd go 2 days, like 3 days, and he'd just be on the job. He wouldn't eat, and then I'd be like, "Have you eaten?" Dad? He's like, "Oh no, I ate 2 days ago. I ate a day ago." I'm just like, "Whoa!" Do you know what I mean? And even after I stopped going with him, I'd always check in with him. If you eat, he's just like, "Oh yeah, I ate yesterday," or "Yeah, I'll eat some bread." He's like, "Working. I'm gonna eat some bread tonight. I haven't not eaten for a day," and he really goes at it. And I think when I remember some of the days when myself and my brother Samuel, when we were at university. When I remember some of the all-nighters, and you know, every day everyone does all-nighters at uni, but some of the stretches we went through, I think kind of just paralleling those two, I think, yeah, that's definitely something, a trait we got from Dad. So
yeah, you're still like that though, because even although you're talking about university, even now,
yeah, I know,
and you'll be up till there. I'm like, man, you got to turn that off now.
I know, I can really get into it. So
you can.
Obviously, so Drive, I think, for my dad, and then I think my mum's tenacity. Yeah, I think I've got that too. You know, so yeah. Okay. How about you?
Oh my days. A good trait is I feel like nurturing. My mum was very nurturing. She was very, about us kind of thing. Okay. She was really about us. She always made sure that we had. If she didn't have, we'd have. And she'd do whatever she could to make sure that we were all right. We never went without. That was a good thing. We never went without. She always, there was a stage where, she'd always put us first. As you start to get older, you get into your teens and she's kind of like, you're on your own, mate. There's 7 of you. There's only so much I can spread out, But yeah, she's very, very nurturing, very cooks all the time. We had cooked food. We never really ate out, she just always made sure that there was enough.
Yeah, I think I'd say I thought you were gonna say like your party nature you got from your mum, but that's one thing I'd say. I think when we were
my personality, my people personality.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Your hospitality.
Yeah, that's
because
definitely
one thing I remember
my mum.
when we were younger. A lot of people wanted to be at your house.
Yes.
They wanted to be like people, like especially like the young. It's odd where we grew up. Like no, but you didn't really want to go to the house. And when you go to the house, you're kind of you run up to my room or someone's room. But it's like one thing I noticed about the community, your brother and your sisters and that. Your house, people wanted to go there. They were so cool, and it was just like
because my mum was just so cool.
And that's why because she was rich. She was super hospitable.
Such a people person.
She'd entertain people in. So, and I think that's
I definitely got my entertainment nature from my mum. That's what I
told you. That's that part of you. I told you. Run the music. Sorry, go.
No, my mum could go anywhere and light up the place. And I So that was
good. That energy. I see that energy.
And
just one. It doesn't have to be positive or negative, but just maybe one trait from your dad.
My dad. Well, I didn't really grow up with my dad, so I don't really.
You couldn't place that.
Yeah, I couldn't really place that. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really grow up with my dad. So yeah.
Uncle John.
Yeah, Uncle John. I'm just thinking. Well, it'll have to be a good one from Uncle John,
that's what I'm saying.
From Daddy John.
Yeah, just tell me.
Because, he's very much, honey, do what you think is right. He was very much, if you think that's right, then go for it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But he was always kind of like, he who don't hear will feel, he's always dropping the little quotes and things like that. But he was very much, okay, if that's a choice you want to make, make it.
Encourage you to stand your ground and be independent.
That was it. He was very encouraging on standing your ground kind of thing. Because he's a very bold man. Don't let no one push him around kind of thing. And he really did pass that on. But again, it's not fair to not have like a negative. I think the negative one would probably be not trusting with finances at first. The early stages, money issues. Yeah. Money issues. I think that would probably be one of the negative ones that I'd say would be from my parents. Just the money, like handling not handling money properly, kind of thing. Not really having good financial understanding, stuff like that. Not really been taught how to manage money, things like that. And being very kind of like, you gotta save it now because you don't know when the next one's coming, kind of thing, you know. So that's what I'd say.
That's interesting. It's interesting how money kind of filters down. I remember, you know already, like my mum would be like, "Son, this is a checkbook.
I know, right?
Make sure you
I met him.
Make sure you cross the line.
All of this.
Make sure you cross the line so they don't add anything after." I'm just
I was like,
okay,
you sure you didn't sneakily try and get a bank job? Do you know what I mean?
Oh my goodness.
So no, but you know what? It's beautiful to really kind of stop to think sometimes. And I hope you're also thinking about the good and the bad influences that you had from your parents. And feel free to share that. Again, we're a community. It's good for us to share and be open, kind of thing. So we really hope this is blessing you guys. We really hope it's blessing you guys.
Let's jump into the comments. Let's see where we are.
Let's jump into the comments. It kind of starts from... I think you put those ones up already, isn't it?
I did.
Okay, also, Osa says, looking forward to a blessed, positive season. Kat Johnson says, evening, Sir Osa. Kat Johnson says, good evening, everybody. Mrs. Icamin says, evening all. Ecos Mios, hi, guys. And... we just got some small comments here. Ecos Mios, Mr. Icamin says, yay, Grace. Grace says, hey. Mr. Kimwin. So we've got Ecos Mios. Oh, sorry, my thing's just kind of... Ecos Mios says, it's true, we bring some things over from our parents' relationships or lack thereof into marriages. Yeah. It's vital we spot them and uproot the negative impacts and traits.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's super powerful. I think we've touched on that kind of immensely, and it's true. I think having that as an understanding, really understanding that, and I think this is you know what's important. I think it's important as parents to teach our children. You know, there are things that you're going to take from me that are positive. There are things you're going to take from me that are negative. And again, I think it really comes down to having that humble attitude you spoke about earlier on. If the spirit is not humble, then we don't want to put our worst foot forward and say, you know, this is where I made mistakes, and I think you get that part from me. That's a challenge, and we talked with Grace about some things like that from time to time, and I think it's important that we understand from the get-go that there are things we are taking whether we like it or not, and they're going to flow in whether we like it or not. So we need to be able to kind of safeguard and marshal those things very well.
Because even sometimes, every so often, you'd sit down and you'd go, she gets that from you. Yeah. And I'll be like, she gets this from you. Or one of the kids get this from, you know. So we're even though they're young, we're still looking at the traits that they have, and we're trying to pinpoint where it comes from. That's right. Because it is good to kind of, it's also good to do that, because then you can, as a parent, you can go, okay, that's not a very good trait, so I better stop that now, because I don't want them growing up with this habit kind of thing. So it's good to be able to identify the traits that you're passing on to your children when they're quite young, because if it is negative ones that you know are just going to be no good, you can do something about it early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's so true. I can't add much to that, to be honest with you.
Kat Johnson says, it's so deep. You really have to evaluate where certain behaviours come from. Yeah. 100%. She also says, best sense of humour.
Her best trait.
Oh, her best trait, sense of humour. Worst trait, how to communicate when emotional. Right.
See, and that's super. And it's like, again...
Thank you for sharing that as well.
When Sarah talks about kind of evaluating ourselves and acknowledging that that's not a good trait, the reason this is important because it helps us in being individuals that are willing to develop ourselves. So it's not only important to say, oh, Mum, I got this from you, or Dad, I got this from you, but it's what I'm going to do with that information now that I have it. Pointing fingers is one thing, but that's not the mark of an individual who's focused on developing themselves and growing. So thanks, Kat Johnson, for that. Thanks, Ecosmios, Grace, Mrs. Icamin, and everyone so far.
Ecosmios says, best, the ability to just move on from things, just let certain things roll off the back, and the worst, lack of emotional and
touchy-feeliness.
Sorry, I didn't even see you.
That's fine.
Sorry.
She says she's laughing at that. She says, but since that's been said, I'd say my dad's hot-headedness is quick to anger. Yeah, see, it's funny because what we're hearing now are people who have actually taken a moment to say, okay, you know what, this is where it goes to. And I'm doubting that maybe we're picking these up right now in the stream. I'm hoping that these are things we thought about before. And even if it's just right now, we've now got the information. So what's next? What are we going to do? So with the best traits we've got, what's the next step with those? With the worst traits we've got, what's the next step with those? And are we thinking about how those traits are going to go down the line now? All right. Are we kind of demonstrating those traits now to our children, if there are children involved, and permitting them to run on with that? Or are we saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to ensure that I'm going to ensure that doesn't go down to my child and my spouse doesn't continue to get the backlash of that. Or I develop more, I weigh in more on my best trait and ensure that, you know, that is something that goes down because it's important and I can see the value of it. It's biblically based and it's important for those ahead. So
definitely.
Maybe a trait, she said worse. She said maybe a trait you've got from growing up without a dad. So what was that? What did Says say?
Oh, maybe a trait you've got from growing up without a dad. I said I didn't really know my dad.
Yeah, I know. So if you can just chuck a little light on that really quickly, that'll be great. Yeah. Mrs. Cameron says best, highly caring and discerning. That's important. That's very important. Look at that again. I'm so grateful that everyone's just sharing like this. Worst from my dad, letting things go easily. So, are you saying that you shouldn't let things go? Oh no, she said it. Not letting things go easily. Okay, super. All right, that's big. Yeah. So I think that's good. I think we had a good session today. I think we've had a good session. Tackled a few points here and there.
Yeah. I just thought, you know, again, you know, this subject is very good for us because in a marriage, at some point, you will become a parent. Okay, so even if you're just starting out and you have plans to have children, you know, it's good because you can, like we've said, you can evaluate yourself, you can evaluate your timeline, and those that have gone before you and how they have affected, whether good or bad, you as a person and you and your marriage, and then obviously passing that on forward to your children. You know, what don't you want to drop? What do you want to change as they grow up? What habits do you not want them to ever see or ever have? You know, and then again, as a parent, thinking in advance for when our children jump on the journey of marriage.
That's right, go on.
How we're going to interact with them, how we're going to influence them, what kind of in-law do we want to be, you know, or what kind of outlaw for some people do they want to be, you know, kind of thing. Absolutely. You know, because some parents, you know, they get to that stage where they even just have an attitude where they just, because they're not being taken in, they'd rather be out, you know, instead of just being, you know, having the leeway that they've been granted, they want more. But so because they want more, they're not being given enough. They're just like, well, I don't want anything to do with these.
Well, this is what's powerful. So I think one of the crux we wanted to talk about here, really just to summarize things, is that at the forefront of your marriage, when we talk about influence, the influence should be from God. Now, we always talk about, you know, having your plan set out in motion, evaluating yourself, evaluating your spouse, and determining where you're going as a couple. But what's most important is who is governing and guiding your relationship. So when you talk about things like that, we as parents or developing parents or would-be parents, one of the key things for us to evaluate is how am I influencing my children's marriage, and am I influencing it in a godly manner? As the couple ourselves, we need to consider who is influencing our marriage, and are we permitting them to influence it in a godly manner? And I think those things are paramount. Faith in God first. And remember, like I said, you know, we have to safeguard our marriage. That's right. That's our number one priority. One of our number one priorities is to safeguard our marriage from all angles, leaving nothing uncovered, you know, fully being aware of what's taking place, you know, not obsessively, not thinking everyone's out to get you kind of thing, but just as you live, understanding that your marriage is in the center and there needs to be a wall around it. Your children are in the center. There needs to be a wall around it. You know, you can open the door. Hiya, yeah, you can come in. You can give permission
for people to come in. But you don't just open every door and let everyone come in, step in, and you know, start dropping you know, things here and there for you, because you're going to end up with a lot of stuff to deal with,
that's
you
right.
know, kind of thing.
Baggage.
Yeah, so
A lot of baggage.
what have we got here?
Mum best, sense of humour, people's personality. Dad's best, resilience.
Hallelujah.
I'm glad everyone's evaluating these. Grace says, I think East Cosmios was asking if there were any traits you developed as a result of growing up without a dad. Thank you so much. And she said, yes. East Cosmios says, thanks, Grace. Yeah, so says,
well, she said it there.
yeah. Are there any traits you think you've developed as a result of growing up without a dad?
Well, the funniest thing is I was very blessed actually to have Daddy John come into my life very early.
Yeah.
So technically I didn't grow up without a dad, but I grew up without my biological dad.
Got you.
So I mean, my stepdad, he's been there since I was 3, going on 4, kind of, yeah, or 4 going on 5. I think it is 4 going on 5. And you know, I'm in my late 30s now, so I didn't grow up without a dad. But then, you know, you always kind of knew in the back of your mind that your real dad is somewhere, kind of thing. But that didn't really bother me because, you know, there was 7 of us. We had so many family around, you know. My dad was always there, you know. Daddy John was always there. He's never a day he wasn't there, kind of thing. So yeah, but I kind of, if I'm to think and really dig deep, it would probably be a trait that growing up. No, I don't know. I don't know. A trait of growing up without your dad. I think maybe just always, maybe having it in the back of the mind that no matter who the person is, they can leave at any time. That would probably be something that I kind of had growing up.
Yeah.
You know. The
insecurity.
Well, not I wouldn't say insecurity, but just kind of like you have enough people around you, so if one goes, you've still got enough people around you.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Do you get what I mean? Like I was never without a friend. I was never without friends. I was always had people in my life, you know, kind of thing, because you just kind of, you know, you just kind of knew, well, if your dad can leave and he's your dad, then anyone else can leave.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not a trait I let affect me as I was growing
powerful.
up, kind of thing.
That's
so yeah,
powerful.
I hope that answers the question. He cost me, I had me ticket deep. Hello, somebody.
All right, guys.
I'm in the hot seat.
We're going to roll just once more. So for those of you that are interested in evaluating your marriage mindset, we have a checklist. It's free for you to pick up, and you can go to the URL on the screen. It's blog.godlifeco.com/marriage.
Yes,
Yeah,
so we will link that in the description below. And if I can find that movie as well, we'll link that as well.
Yeah,
we'll link that as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
So guys, it's been a blessing
It really
and a joy
has.
once
It always
again
is.
to spend time with you lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's been Ezekiel.
Yeah, and she's been Sarah.
And this has been Marriage Matters Live.
See you guys later.
Take care.
Walk.